In 7-0, let's review our place value system. Okay, so this is about rounding. We have to know how to round, guys. Those of you that have struggled with it, hopefully this will clear it up. So everybody, follow along, pay attention. There might be some things that you may have forgotten. So here's our decimal point. The others in here are commas. So there's our decimal point. To the left of the decimal points, remember guys, if you're calling these different places, this is the ones place. Next is the tens. And next is the hundreds. Now be careful how you're spelling these. Notice these have just S at the end because that will be different to the right of the decimal. Next, you guys know that this would be thousands, the thousands place. And next, 10,000s, 100,000s, all right, what's after thousands? Right, millions. And then just kind of following the pattern, right? So 10 millions, 100 millions. And after millions would be what? Billions. Okay, and it just keeps going with that same pattern. All right, to the right of the decimal, the first place is called the tenths. Notice how it's spelled. Okay, it has THS at the end. So there's no like ones place on the right. Other than that, it just kind of follows the pattern. So there's tenths. Next would be hundredths. Look at the spelling, THS. And then thousands. So tens, hundreds, thousands. And then 10,000s. Hundred thousands. And then after the thousands, millions. Okay, after 100,000s comes millions. And you would just keep following that same pattern. Okay, so then let's talk about what it really means when we say rounding to the nearest hundredths. Okay, so rounding to the nearest hundredths, a few things that you want to know. So that means if you go back and look at hundredths, that is 2 places after the decimal place, right? Okay, so what that should mean to you when we say round to the nearest hundredths is that you should end up with two numbers after the decimal point. Two numbers after the decimal point. Okay, because some people still know hundredths. We say 2 places, but then they still give me 3. So be careful with that. And then what it really means is that you should be using the place to the right of it. So if you go back and look up top, it would be the thousandths, right, to the right of that. So you use the thousandths place to determine the rounding. Okay, and then your rule, this is for all of them, doesn't really matter what place we're talking about, but if the number that you're looking at next to it is 5 or higher, it means round up. Okay, and by round up, we mean change the number up. You'll see that in the examples. Okay, but if it's 4 or lower, we call it round down. But you need to understand that rounding down, guys, really just means leave the number the same. Okay, that's just the language, the math language. All right, so then why don't you try to write out that same thing. Turn off the video for a second. Write out that same thing of what rounding to the nearest thousands would mean then, following what I just wrote above for you about the nearest hundredths. Okay, so turn it off and come back and join me and see how you did. Okay, check it out. So rounding to the nearest thousands should mean you should end up with 3 numbers after the decimal point, right? Because if you look above, it's in the 3rd place. And then you use the 10,000th place to determine the rounding. And like we said, the rounding rules like the 5 and above and 4 and below will stay the same. So I did not rewrite that part, but everything else, yep, it's the same. Okay, so let's practice. Let's do some examples. Okay, so let's say in this first column, we are rounding to the nearest 10th. Okay, the nearest 10th. Okay, so first of all, what number, why don't you just underline it, what number is in the 10th spot? All right, so I'm going to underline the 9. That means I am looking at the 2. The 2 is the only thing that tells me to change the 9 to a 10, if you will, or leave it a 9. The 2 says round down, right? Which means leave the 9 alone and just make it 1.9. There's your final answer. Next one, underline the number in the 10th spot, which would be the 4. You look at the 9. The 9 will tell you to leave the 4 a 4 or change it to a 5. 9 should say round up, and therefore it would change to 6.5. Right, next one. Underline what's in the 10th spot. That would be the first 9. You're looking at the number to the right of it, the second 9. That 9 tells you whether to leave the first 9 a 9 or change it to a 10. I think it will help you if you call it like 9 and 10. Okay, because this one throws people sometimes. So of course the 9 tells us to round up, so the 9 should change to a 10. That means you have to have a number, right? You got to go to the nearest 10th. You have to have a number after the decimal point. So the 10 is now 1.0. That's how you think of it, right? The 9 changed into a 0 and the 0 turned into a 1. Right? All right, next column. Notice we're now doing hundredths. So underline the number in the 100th spot. That would be the 5. You're looking at the 1 then to decide. I like to say 45, right? Call that 45. Are you going to leave the 45 a 45 or change it to a 46? That's how I look at it. So the 1 says round down, which means leave it 3.45. Okay. All right. Next one, the 100th spot is the 1. The 9 tells you to round up. So the 81 should stay 81 or change to 82. Well, round up means change it to 82. So 4.82. All right, that last one, 9 is in the 100th spot. You're looking at the 6 to determine if the 59 should say 59 or change to 60. 6 says to round up, so change it to 60. Okay, you can't just put 8.6, right? Because notice that's not to the nearest 100th, guys. That's only to the nearest 10th, 8.6. So that's why I like you guys to think about it as 59 and 60 so that you won't leave off that 0. Okay, and that has to do with like your significant figures in your science classes too. All right, last one, last column. Here we go, 1,000th spot. So the number in the 1,000th spot, 3 over, is the 6. You're looking at the 3 to determine whether to leave that 636 after the decimal, if you will, or change it to 637. 3 says round down, so 9.636. 9.636. Okay. Again, here's the 1,000th spot, the 9. You're looking at the 3. Leave it 189 or change it to 190. Leave it round down, so 2.189. Okay, last one. The 7 is in the thousand spot. Looking at the 8, are we leaving it 567 or changing it to 568? Round up to 568, so 12.568. All right, that's what you need. Make sure that you've got that mastered so that we have no more problems rounding for the rest of the year. Okay, hopefully that clarifies it for you guys forever. All right, good luck.